Our story begins on Geonosis as the young 13-year-old Boba Fett holds his father's helmet to his face. Boba remembered the purple lightsaber of Windu cutting through his father, but Boba also remembered seeing a look of shock, disappointment, or maybe even regret on Windu's face. It didn't matter. In this moment, Boba vowed revenge against Windu. He dragged his father's body out of the arena, fighting through a sandstorm, and he came upon a cliffside, where he buried his father for good. Then he took the armor back to the ship. It was a long walk back, and Boba could hear the sounds of a distant battle beginning to fade. After a while, Boba reached the ship and stopped in his tracks. Someone was waiting for him. Boba grabbed Jango's blaster from the armor and aimed, firing 2 shots at this man. Both of them were thrown away with the Force, and the dust was cleared to reveal Mace Windu. Anger filled Boba's mind. The Jedi was here to finish him off. But Windu carried a sad, regretful look on his face as he asked Boba to sit, using the Force to pull the blaster away. Boba begrudgingly listened as Windu sincerely apologized. He never wanted to orphan a boy as young as Boba, and Windu said he was acting in self-defense, but there were better ways to go about it. Then, the Jedi offered for Boba to come to the Jedi Temple for a while, until he's ready to be on his own. But Boba told Windu that he was fine on his own, getting into the ship. Once he was out of view of Windu, he closed his eyes, beginning to cry. He'd heard stories about the Jedi. Perhaps they were not all that bad, but he couldn't go with Windu. He must avenge his father. And in time, he would. So he took off, looking down at Mace as Boba blasted into hyperspace for Sereno. On Sereno, Dooku was just returning from Coruscant when the ship of Jango Fett landed beside him. The young Boba got out and asked Dooku for a job. Dooku almost scoffed at the child in front of him. Dooku had just started a war. He didn't have time for this. So he told Boba to visit him in a few years when he's old enough to have a real bounty. Boba tried to argue, but he was held back by the Magna Guards as Dooku walked into his castle, barely looking at Boba, and the young boy came to a realization. It was not the Jedi who were responsible for the death of his father. Sure, Windu was the one to strike him down, but what choice did he have? Boba knew now that Dooku was the one responsible. He made Jango go fight an arena of Jedi, while he stood up top and only watched. He hired Jango for all of it, and now he just let Jango go like he was dust in the wind. And Boba wondered if, perhaps, Dooku wanted Jango dead. Perhaps his father knew secrets that would be better to keep dead with him. And so now Boba changed his crusade of revenge away from the Jedi and towards Dooku. He would show Dooku that he is capable of being a bounty hunter, just like his father. And so Boba got back into his ship, taking off for Kamino. He would take Dooku down from the inside. And from inside the castle, Dooku watched the ship leave, wondering if he'd made the right decision. When Boba landed on Kamino, a group of Kaminoans that enjoyed his company came up to him, apologizing for the death of Jango, but they said that Jango left a small vault of things for Boba to inherit after his death. Boba walked with the Kaminoans for a while, until he eventually came upon the small vault. Inside of it were a bunch of Jango's possessions that now belonged to Boba, a book of lessons and experiences, schematics for weapons, armor, and gadgets, and Jango's security clearance to Kamino facilities were among the most important items located here. Boba thanked the Kaminoans and asked if he could stay in his old room for a while, until he finds his place in the galaxy. The Kaminoans had no issue with this, and so Boba settled in, then began planning his next moves. Over the next month, the galaxy would go to war. Republic versus Separatists, Jedi versus Sith, clones versus droids. Every day, more clones were to be sent out, and every day, Boba spent his time on Kamino, digging into the clones. At first it was just a desperate grab at anything, but the more he thought about it, the more Boba slowly realized that Jango and Dooku worked together. Perhaps there was something truly sinister going on here. And after about a month or so of digging, Boba came upon 2 extremely important pieces of information that he could use to bring Dooku down. First, a hologram of Dooku speaking with Jango, where Dooku admitted that he was in charge of putting together the clone army. And second, Boba analyzed the Jango Fett genotype along with the clone troopers, looking for anything at all. And eventually, Boba would discover the clones have some sort of chip inside of them, every single one of them. And Boba used the security clearance from his father to find a list of protocols inside of these chips, including Protocol 66. All Jedi could be eliminated upon activation of it. Boba had it. Dooku commissioned this clone army for the Jedi in time he could use the clones to kill the Jedi. It was brilliant. And this is how Boba would get his revenge. He would tell the Jedi about this, and Dooku's plans would fall to the wayside. Inside of the Jedi Council, the Jedi were talking amongst each other about the progressing war. This was still so new to all of them. The clones were truly great soldiers, but there was still a great mystery about them. And as they talked, the Temple Gate Master Jirok sent a hologram message to the Jedi Council, saying someone was here to speak with them, a young boy called Boba Fett. Mace Windu sat up, telling Jirok to let the boy in. After some waiting, Boba would walk into the council room, guided by temple guards. His eyes were wide with awe at the temple. It was huge, and it was rare for citizens to truly see all of it. Once Boba was standing in the middle of the council, he told the Jedi he was doing this for his father, not for them, and then began displaying everything he found using his father's security clearance on Kamino. Everything goes much deeper than anyone suspected. Boba showed the Jedi proof that Dooku built the clone army and was still closely working with the Kaminoans. And he also showed them evidence of the inhibitor chips, which contained orders for the clones that they could not refuse, including one to take down all of the Jedi. The council was completely in shock, and they thanked Boba for this. Boba was satisfied, and ultimately was given a lot of Republic credits for his efforts. He thought Dooku would be arrested in time, and then from there, Dooku would be eliminated by him in prison. The young bounty hunter planned on watching this war end, and in the upcoming peacetime, he could thrive in the criminal underworld. Once Boba was gone, the council talked for a long time, and ultimately decided to bring this information to Chancellor Palpatine. Yoda, Windu, Shaak Ti, and Obi-Wan Kenobi would go to the Chancellor's office and discuss this with him. How Dooku built the army, and how there are chips inside their brains designed to execute orders without any hesitation, like they were droids. Ultimately, the Jedi told Palpatine that the clones need to go through a chip removal process. Every single one of them. The Chancellor called to the Kaminoans, who explained to the Jedi and the Chancellor that these chips were to keep the clones in line and not be aggressive like their host, Jango Fett. But the Jedi, seeing that Dooku designed the chips and seeing Jango's son bring evidence, they were not having any of this. The Jedi went on to tell Palpatine that either the chips be removed or the Jedi are removing themselves from the war effort. And now Palpatine, secretly Sidious, was stuck. He needed the Jedi to fight and die off over time. He needed this war to slowly bring down the Republic, leaving it open to become his empire. But he was left with very few options. So Palpatine granted the chip removal process, and he decided that the Sith would shift to Plan B, taking over the galaxy and forming an empire with power. And so over the next few months, Kamino would begin its process of bringing in clone trooper legions one by one and having their chips removed. The clones without their chips exhibited no signs of increased aggression. In fact, they seemed more free and happy overall. Things were going well, and the Jedi thought they were escaping the grasp of Dooku's grand plan. But, of course, it was not Dooku's plan. He executed all of it for sure, but it was all under the command of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The Jedi figured Dooku had no idea about the chip removal, when in fact, he knew everything from Palpatine. And together, Dooku and Palpatine came up with a plan. Because Dooku helped create the clone army, he knew everything about Kamino. The Jedi failed to take this into account, trying to scramble all at once. They failed to remember this. And one day, as a large chip removal was taking place, Dooku launched an all-out attack on Kamino. With the clones no longer being part of Dooku and Palpatine's plan, they decided to just win this war with ease. And so they completely unleashed their droid forces, which secretly outnumbered the clones about 6 million to 1 million. Kamino never stood a chance. There were around 50 Jedi stationed here, led by Master Shaak Ti, but Dooku knew everything he needed to know about Kamino. he launched a fleet 4 times the size of the Republic blockade, and they shredded through the Republic, making their way into the atmosphere. Shaak Ti and the Jedi could only watch as the Separatist fleet got into range, and within the hour they rained firepower down on the city, blowing it down into the water. Clone production was completely shut down. The Republic suffered a huge loss. The Sith had been planning this war for decades. The clones would have been nice, but they of course had backup plans. For another month, the Outer Rim territories would quickly be taken over by the Separatists. Clones quickly dropped from about 1 million to around 250,000 of them, while more droids were built every single day. The war was barely a war. It was now more of a takeover without hesitation. And with Kamino gone, along with the Outer Rim territories under the control of the Separatists, the Republic was very low on options. Inside of the Jedi Council, a group of senators known as the Loyalist Committee, led by Padme, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma, were discussing a surrender to the Separatists with the Jedi, when suddenly, an overwhelming Separatist fleet was launched above Coruscant, but they did not fire at the Republic. Instead, Count Dooku sent a hologram down to the Senate, asking for a peaceful surrender. Immediately, a vote from the senators was put into place, and a huge majority voted for immediate peace. And just like that, the war was set to end. The Jedi Order, now sitting at around 6,000 members of the 10,000 at the start of the war, with roughly half of them being able to actually fight, waited tensely as Dooku's personal ship descended into the Jedi Temple hangar. Dooku, guided by his Magna Guards, walked through the temple. Countless Jedi looked at him with fear as he reached the elevator. Before the door could close, though, Anakin Skywalker stepped inside with him. Anakin didn't speak, but he would not be missing whatever was about to happen inside of the Jedi Council. And in the Council, Dooku walked to the center, while Anakin went to the side. In his victory, Dooku had time to truly think about what he wanted for the galaxy. At the end of the day, he wanted to rule over it and make the galaxy a prosperous place for the citizens, free of corruption. So he looked to the Loyalist Committee of Senators in here, along with the Jedi Council. And Dooku said he was here to reveal the truth and ask for their help in reforming the galaxy. So Dooku took a deep breath, and he began explaining everything. The reason he left the Jedi Order and the Republic in the first place was because of the corruption, and the corruption goes to the top of everything. Dooku revealed that Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious, controlling both sides of the war. And then Dooku urged the senators in here, along with the Jedi, to look at how quickly the Republic surrendered. The moment the Separatists got into the core worlds, it was over. Dooku explained that the Republic has no care for the Outer Rim. They only care about themselves. He wants to change that. He wants to reform the galaxy, make it better. And Dooku admitted he's not evil. He just went to who was going to win, so in time, he could do what he has to do. And Dooku told the senators and the Jedi that Palpatine should be arrested for his crimes. Dooku said he will step in as Chancellor, and every planet will have a new, fair election to determine whether or not the current senator remains in place. Then he turned to the Jedi, saying they must leave the Republic. Being part of the Republic has caused them to fall so far from who they are. Leave the Republic, serve the entire galaxy as peacekeepers, rather than serving the Republic as soldiers. With all of this evidence, the Jedi and the senators had no choice but to accept these terms. In fact, these terms were extremely fair to them, as the Jedi realized Dooku was right. Under their watch, the Sith had risen to lead the galaxy. But Dooku was no Sith. Not truly. And he wanted to arrest the true Sith. Once these terms were accepted, Dooku, Windu, and a battalion of clones marched to Palpatine's office. Up until this moment, Palpatine was under the impression that Dooku was going to launch an attack on the Jedi Temple, wipe them out. But now, Palpatine was left with zero options, as this group infiltrated his office. Palpatine was taken completely off guard, and he decided to let himself be arrested. He had people in the Senate, in the prisons, in every faction of every part of the Republic. There would be a rebellion in his name. He would be saved, and he would rule as the true Sith Lord in due time. He was placed in force restraining handcuffs and taken down to a prison shuttle outside of the building. but right before Palpatine could enter the shuttle, a sniper shot came from far above and pierced through his heart. Palpatine gave one final defeated gasp and fell dead. Security personnel began running to find this sniper, but both Dooku and Windu looked to the sky to see a bounty hunter in Mandalorian armor using his jetpack to fly away. Boba Fett. In Boba's mind, he eliminated the person at the top, the person who truly got his father into this mess from the start. He took out the biggest enemy of the galaxy, the man responsible for his father's death. For Boba, this was the revenge he needed, and he flew off to start his new life as a bounty hunter. In time, Chancellor Dooku would explain everything to the Republic. The droid army was to be shut down, the clones would be the security of the galaxy, and each planet would have a new, uncorrupted election for a senator. After the elections, around half of the senators were replaced with actual good people, and the Republic began to rebuild in Dooku's vision. It would be a quiet but prosperous rule, and the Republic would serve the people, not just the wealthy senators. The Jedi Order would disperse throughout the galaxy, and in time, they would not all be isolated to one planet, but they would learn from their mistakes, building many outposts, many temples in the galaxy. Yoda stepped down as Grand Master, seeing his flaws in letting the Jedi become so corrupt and stuck, and Plo Koon would replace him to lead the Jedi in becoming true keepers of the peace. In time, under the rule of a peaceful republic, Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala would have their twin children, Luke and Leia, to be the future of the peaceful galaxy. And folks, that's where our story ends today. Let's talk about it. But first, before anyone comments, you sound like you're... I used to get comments all the time that were like, you sound like you're crying or out of breath. And I was able to change my voice. I think I sound better now. But right now, I'm a little sick. I've run out of breath very easily with this cold. So, if at any point during the story you were like, this guy's losing it. Yeah, I was, but I made it through. I powered through, because I'm brave. Anyways, let's talk about it. Windu at the beginning, I wanted to do something where Boba finds Windu at his ship, and Windu actually feels sorry about orphaning a 13-year-old child. I think that makes sense. Windu, not a very compassionate guy in the movies, but in the novels, I think he is much more. So I wanted to really express that. And then, Boba Fett just kind of being like, oh, hey, maybe the Jedi aren't so terrible. Goes to Dooku on Sereno. Dooku is mean to him, and then so Boba shifts his alliance from wanting to get revenge on Windu to revenge on Dooku, and ultimately it fails because, well, Dooku takes over the entire galaxy. But I wanted to end it with Boba getting a sniper shot on the man who was truly at the top. I thought it was a nice way to tie Boba's story. He's now, ruling the criminal underworld. Maul dies on Skako Minor. And yeah, Dooku ruling with peace. I think that's fair. Upon, seeing how easy victory was, Dooku sees an opportunity to truly do what he always wanted to do. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of the story, and I'll see you in the next video.